Welcome to The Other Side of the Bridge with Iron City Paranormal, where they discuss real investigations, first-hand experiences, unexplained moments, and everything that happens when you step off the regular path and onto the other side of the bridge. Just honest paranormal talk, Iron City Paranormal style. And now, here are your hosts, Derek Smith and Dan Metelsky.
Welcome back, Ian's guys, to The Other Side of the Bridge with Iron City Paranormal, episode 15. Aaron, what are we talking about tonight? This is a good episode.
I'm excited to talk about this, Dan. We are talking about spiritual attachments. Can something follow you home?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So this is playing off of what we talked about last week, which was the cleansings, right? And as we had talked about last week, cleansings can happen on spaces as well as objects and people. And one of the very weird things we were talking about last week was the fact that when you do a cleansing on a person, you have to get into all their crevices, right?
Yes.
And that kind of spawned this episode's topic, which is, what do you do whenever something attaches? And what is that actually that's attached, quote unquote, to the individual, or is it anything?
Yeah.
Right. So there's a whole lot of stuff to unpack here. And the more we had been talking about it this week, I was like, shit, we could make this an episode. And I think that's a good place to start. So
I mean, this is one of the main questions that we get whenever you start talking to somebody about what we do. Inevitably, in that conversation, you get the question of, well, aren't you worried something's going to follow you home? Every single time, almost verbatim, right? Like that is the fear that people carry, whether they're experienced in it, whether they've dabbled, whether they have no experience. Like it's something that is constantly on the top of people's minds.
Yeah, and I will tell you that over the last 10 years, I could tell you, I can probably count on one hand how many times I have come home and not thought to myself, what if, right? What if something piggybacked off of, my trip back, did not pay gas money, and it now lives with me? Like, what do I do? Right. But so that is definitely a fear of mine. And I think that we would be weird if we didn't think this way, but we also have some examples that we'll talk about at the end of the episode of times when we actually do feel that we took things home. Or
I have some solid examples.
Yeah. Maybe not all the way home, but just like with us in some capacity after we left the space.
Yeah.
Right. So let's jump in. So let's start with why this topic is scary. Right. And I think that, again, I know I work it up in my own head to be something potentially more than it is, but also, is that all it takes, right? Is the belief behind it all it takes? So why is attachment so scary, I guess, is the question. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I do. I think it's partially the unknown, right? Like it's one thing when you're going to a space and like, hey, I'm going into this area. I know what to expect. I'm going to be creeped out. I'm going to be looking over my shoulder. I'm going to be hyper vigilant and hyper fixating on the noises around me and all of those different things. And then at the end of the day, the end of the night, you pack everything up, you come home to your safe space, and all of a sudden that safe space doesn't feel safe anymore, right? Like now all of a sudden you're hyper vigilant in your own space and you're wondering if that creepy thing that you thought was staring over your shoulder is now staring over you in bed while you're trying to go to sleep at 4:00 in the morning. I think it's that fear of the unknown. I think a lot of it has to do with pop culture as well, and how things are tied into the perception of what the paranormal looks like, right? Like we know in our experience that it is very unlike what is portrayed pop culturally. But in our minds, you have this experience built up, And whenever you're coming home into your own space, that's what's going to take over. You're going to be thinking that it's the evil thing, it's the exorcisms, it's that insanity that's going to make you feel unsafe or cause you or your family harm or what have you. Whereas we know that may not be what's really interacting with us.
Well, no, that's a really good point. And what to me is very different with how I am at home versus when I'm investigating is what you said at the very beginning of what you were just talking about, where there is essentially like a protective shield that we put up for ourselves when we are investigating. But when I come home, I think we all kind of let that guard down, and we're very vulnerable in our home space, and that's where it kind of, creeps me out is I don't know if it's not necessarily that I lack the control to do something about it when I'm home, but just feel more vulnerable. Right. And I think that for me, at least, that's where it plays for me, besides the fact that the vulnerability of my wife and child, right? That's something that we need to look into. So yeah, it's the fear of losing control of something where I feel safe, right? Is very much what plays me. But I think it's really interesting when you say about like the way that pop culture has framed things. I wish that ghost hunting and paranormal investigation was as easy as the movies make it seem. Right. I wish I could open a door and there would be a scary thing standing there that I could catch on camera, but it's just not what happens. There's so much of investigating that's just sitting around and waiting. But again, pop culture, right? That's what's in everybody's head. And so much so that when we invite people with us that have never done that before, that's very much the selling point to people that I have used is it's going to be boring, right? But
you have to caveat like that. Like I mean, if you're coming in thinking that you're going to have jump scares every 5 minutes, like that's just not that's nowhere near the reality.
No. And I think that it's important to temper people's expectations up front, but then also when you enter with that in your head, the times that something does happen, because it does happen during it, almost every investigation we've done, we have some pretty darn cool interactions with things, right? That we can't explain. It just makes those moments all the better, right? It's like fishing, right? We've talked about that before. Like it's just like fishing. So what are your thoughts about like how like attachments and how scary they are being as or more scary than the building itself? Have you ever thought about that? Have you ever, been more concerned about what could be following you than you are initially about going into the space in the first place?
Well, 100%. I mean, some buildings have their own personalities, but at the end of the day, a building stays still. It stays where it is. It stays grounded where it is. It does not follow you home. Whereas even when we are in a space, it's the entities that are within that space that do follow you, right? Like you can walk into a room and know that there is something about that room that makes it special, but you walk out of that room stays there. Whereas to be followed around in a building by an entity and therefore potentially being able to have that thing follow you out. You know what I mean? Like the building is just a building for the most part.
True. Sure.
Right? Really, a majority of the time, the building's just creepy and dark and lots of spider webs and gross. And, at the end of the day, we're interacting with the entities that are there. Yeah. I mean, what do you think about that?
I agree with that. But I think that the same psychological misshaping happens whether you're going in or coming out of an investigation, right? Like I said, that mindset that I get in when I get home, that heightened sense of awareness of like did I bring something home? Like I have that almost that same when I get home initially, I'm almost listening just like I would be during an investigation for every noise, right? I want to see if there's the same level of, you know, noises or creaks or things that I don't usually hear around the house that could potentially be ramping up, which would signify to me an attachment or is the house settling?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, so much of paranormal research is psychological.
Yeah. Have you ever felt that heaviness in the car ride home?
So,
in that transition in between?
So, honestly, no. I have personally not until I start to think about it. Again, that psychological thing for me is a big hurdle.
Yeah.
Because ever since I was a child, the road that I actually live on currently, on the lower end of the road when I was a kid, before we lived on this road, I remember my dad telling me a story about at the bottom of our road before it gets down to like a major road. There used to be this old bridge that the road went over. It wasn't even a bridge as much as it was just like a little tube that they had that they paved over top of, right?
Yeah.
So I guess it was a bridge, but it wasn't like a pretty bridge. But I remember as a kid, my dad had told me a story that when he grew up in this area, that they had found a dead prostitute, the body of this prostitute underneath that bridge when he was a kid. So I remember going down that road all the time as a kid in the front seat with my parent or with my dad, thinking to myself, I'm going to turn around and I'm going to see this dead woman in the back seat.
Oh, interesting.
So I have that same thought at moments whenever I am coming back from an investigation, that when I'm driving, I'm just going to like look into the mirror and see something sitting behind me.
Yeah.
You know, I don't feel like there's something with me, but I just get that mental screwiness that happens. Now, I know that you've had that happen.
I have, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm thinking of one in particular. I know we talked about it a little bit before, but coming back from Greene County, yeah.
Yeah. So that for anybody who hasn't heard this story on our previous episodes, we were at an investigation at Greene County Historical Society about a year ago. And I was in a particular section of the building. We believe that was like a men's section, right? There were men's sections and there was women's sections. And I, as a woman, was in this section with Derek at the time, and whatever was there did not like me there and chased me out. And at one point it like bum rushed me with so much energy that I basically ran out of that space. And the amount of energy that it pushed at me, it went right to my third eye and made me so ill. I got a massive headache almost instantly, to the point where I couldn't even keep my eyes open. I ended up leaving the investigation on the way home. I got sick. And you know, whenever I did get home, once I got sick on the way home, we literally pulled over. I got sick on the side of the road. Once I got back to my mom was on that investigation with us. We got back to her house. She saged me. I cut my cords. And you know what? I felt so much better. Now, whether it was just an aftermath of that energy rush, which I feel like it probably was, but being able to cut the cord of that energy that was still attached to me and sage myself, like I felt so much better. Now, there have been times, there was one investigation we were at, and I'm not remembering where it was, but we were interacting with an older male entity when we were there. And for some reason, I just felt like he kind of followed me home. I have some entities that live in my home, but I know who they are and where they reside. They generally leave me alone. But this particular day I got back, and I remember like laying down in bed and just feeling like that particular energy was in my room right around the corner. And I could not calm myself down to get to sleep until I went downstairs, saged myself, cut the cords. And whether it was real or imagined, that was exactly what I needed to feel the entire energy shift. And I went back upstairs. It was like he was never there, if he was at all, and he was gone. I didn't have any issues after that.
So while you were telling that, something just came to my mind that I would love to ask you. So have you had a time when you've come back from an investigation where, because I was not aware that you have spirits in your home. I mean,
I
you
do,
might
yeah.
have told me and I forgot, but
Hmm.
I kind of like when you said that, I was like, oh, geez. But have you ever had a time where when you came home and potentially had something that you hadn't cut the cords with, that the spirits in your home kind of were bothered by something that you brought back with you?
I don't get that impression. The
Okay.
woman that's in my home, I really don't have a lot of interaction with her. I believe that she was a woman that lived here in this home years ago. My neighbor
Mhm.
actually knew her. At one point, I had mentioned to her that I thought that I had a female spirit here. That she used to be around a lot. I have two sons. When my littles were very little,
Mhm.
I would be the room that I'm in now used to be their bedroom, and in the playroom downstairs we would be there, and I could feel that she would just be there watching and observing, and especially at night when they were sleeping in here, I could feel that she was in here just watching over them. And I have a feeling that she misses her sons. And I had mentioned this to my neighbor who lives next door. I said, "Oh, I have a woman who's here. She's pretty attached to my boys. I think that she just misses her sons." And she's like, "Oh, yes, you can call her Mary. She used to live here. She had two sons as well." And so
Oh,
she
no kidding.
really just, yeah, so she really just like, she's attached to the boys, and she just kind of watches over them, and she'll just, pop in when they're playing to see what they're doing. But she really, like, the only times I really had interactions with her was when I was pregnant with Lincoln. She would kind of come around and interact with me a little bit more. Um, the other person that's here, I believe, is my grandfather, who watches over my son Lincoln, who's also pretty open, and most likely
Okay.
has some of the same sensitivities that you and I have. Um, he has mentioned before, like, feeling like there's somebody, when he used to sleep up here, feeling like there was somebody who was standing right outside the door, knocking on the door and talking to him, those kind of things.
So now I
Anyway,
have to ask, how long is it going to be until your son comes on an investigation with us?
well, he has been on an investigation with us. I had to
Has
leave
he?
because I was pregnant with
Oh,
him,
that's right.
and
He wasn't there for the investigation, but he was
he
at the
wasn't.
location.
But you know what? Every single entity that I
Yep.
came into contact with there was so interested in him that I had to leave.
Yeah, I forgot that too was inside of you
Mm-hmm.
at that time. That's cool.
Yep. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Gosh, that's an episode in and of itself right there, though.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
God, we're gonna talk about that later.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get back to the previously scheduled programming.
Yeah.
So how do attachments work? Do we know?
I don't know. And also, we kind of touched on this a little bit before we started. Um, there are people that don't believe in attachments and don't believe that that's something that actually happens. So I'd love to get your impression on that. Like, you've been doing this for years. How do you think this happens?
How do I think attachments happen? I think
Yeah.
in my experience, and I'm thinking back to like when we've done locations that had things in them, like antique shops. And,
Mm-hmm.
of course, there are always places that have, haunted dolls, these antique dolls, these
Mm-hmm.
when Derek and I investigated up in Waterford at the Judson house, which we have to reschedule, by the way, for this year.
Yeah.
When we did that one, there's these antique dolls on the bed in one of the rooms that had moved. We didn't see it physically move. We saw it move, right? Like it was at the front of the top of the bed, and then later on in the night we went back and it was at the base of the bed, like it was
Mm-hmm.
like being pulled off the bed. And all of these things, when I think about attachments of objects, I think about the emotional input that went into that,
Mm-hmm.
object. That's with dolls, with toys, with different things. Derek and I had a doll that the guy that owns After Hours Tattoos in Mars, that he had given to us because somebody dropped it off in his shop, and he was
Mm-hmm.
creeped out by this doll, and he didn't want it in his house or didn't want it in his in his studio. So he gave it to me when I was getting some work done with him, and he's like, "Do you want this doll?" I was like, "Absolutely, I want that doll." You know, knowing all too well that I was just going to give it to Derek and it was going to go live at his house, and I was in the clear. But I had Sabrina, who has been on the show and will hopefully be back on the show at a later point, who's a very skilled medium. I had asked her, we took it up to Waterford, actually, which we were just talking about, took it up to her and got her to read the doll to see if there was any attachment to it. She said there was not a spiritual attachment to it, which kind of sucked, right? Because it's a cool story. Like we wanted there to be something, but what she was feeling from it was just that emotional, you know, she said she could just feel like somebody tossed it to the side. Like it's this kid was playing with it and just kind of threw it to the side of the room or whatever. That's what she was picking up on it. But that very much fits that motif of the emotional baggage, so to speak, that goes along with objects, right? Just like antique shops, right? But at what point do that building of emotional baggage, at what point do those become spiritual attachments?
Yeah.
Right. That's kind of where I live in that space, is if somebody has such a bond with an object.
Yeah.
You know,
an emotional imprint, right? They're imprinted
correct.
on that.
That's a really good word to use for that, that imprint, right? That they have just time and time again interacted with that device, really had a passion for that device, a love for that device or that object, that they themselves become part of it after they pass.
Yeah.
Right. Just like a house, right? Same thing with a house. You know, people that have worked their entire life to get something and they finally get it and then they pass away, right? Very much the Anchorage mansion in Ohio, in Marietta, Ohio. The woman of the house, her husband had spent years fixing the mansion. They moved into the home and she died a year later. So her spirit and the spirit of her children are in the home. You know, that whether they're actually trapped there or if there's that imprint, I don't know. But that's kind of my belief, right? Just that constant buildup of emotional ties and imprinting, to use it again, just kind of gets to what I'd call an attachment.
Yeah.
What do you think?
So I definitely, as you're talking about that, I think of when we were at Greene County, I believe it was Greene County, with the morning art and the spirit that had imprinted to that. I think that is a really good example of exactly what you're talking about. For anybody who isn't aware or missed this episode, we did an investigation at Greene County, and in one of the rooms there is a couple installations of what's called morning art. And if you aren't familiar with what that is, basically before there was the ability for people to take pictures of their loved ones after they've passed or have something to memorialize them, they would take their hair or little pieces of clothing or something that they can take, and they would weave and twirl into these really intricate patterns and make these beautiful pieces of art that they would hang on their wall, and they would use them to memorialize someone. And while we were at Greene County, we did see one of these, and we felt that there was a man that was in this room. And we went in. This was the first investigation I really came on with you guys. We have a picture. We'll have to put that up whenever we do the breakdown of Greene County at some point. But you can see the imprint of a hand on my back, and it's like basically this guy's taking me and pushing us to be looking at the morning art. Even Dan, when he was there, and I'm speaking for you, Dan, you can explain this, but like,
no,
I remember you talking about like being in that room, and it wasn't until you turned your back or were right underneath the morning art that you would feel that immense, like just the pressure and the heaviness. And I'm sure you could speak to that a little bit, but
well, and you're right. And I didn't even know what morning art was at that time. You know, I learned on that investigation from you and Derek talking about it, because I didn't even know. right?
Yeah.
So, and I didn't know that that was even hanging on that wall. It was if you remember, it was a very small little offshoot of a wall, and it was just hanging there. I would have never thought anything different, or like even thought to look for something in that little corner. But then after you explained it to me, it really started to make sense. So we're up against the ad break. So after the ad break, we're going to start talking about those haunted objects and the idea of taking things home with you even further. So stick with us. After the ad, we'll jump right back into it.
The truth, it's out there, and it's waiting for you. The Unexplained Network is your source for the best in paranormal programming, live video streaming, and audio streaming from hauntings, UFOs, Bigfoot, cryptids, and the ever-expanding realm of the unexplained. Listen live or on demand now on Spreaker, Apple Podcast, Spotify, iHeart, and Pockets all over the World Wide Web. The Unexplained Network, where unexplained lives. The new book, How to Research a Haunted House by paranormal investigator Margie Kay and professional researcher Violet Wisdom, is now available from Unex Media. This one-of-a-kind book explains how to do research on a house with uncommon methods and resources used by historic home researchers, and how to determine who may be doing the haunting and why. How to Research a Haunted House can be used by homeowners, renters, investors, and it should be in the library of all professional paranormal investigators. Get this unique book at unexmedia.com or amazon.com. That's unexmedia.com or amazon.com. Every ghost story and creature feature lies a far more terrifying truth. The real monsters wear human faces. In the chilling book, All Monsters Are Human, from Derek Smith, 10 Twisted Tales expose the darkest parts of a human soul. From killers hiding in plain sight to obsessions turned deadly. Each story invites you to step into a shadow world where morality unravels, and the only thing more terrifying than what lurks in the dark is who. These aren't just horror stories. They're reflections of ourselves, showing what happens when fear, rage, guilt, and desire take control. Visit unexmedia.com for more information on All Monsters Are Human from Derek Smith. And you can purchase them at amazon.com from unexmedia.com.
So, Aaron, I pulled up those ads in a specific order, ending with the one for the book that Derek wrote for a very specific reason. Because this next thing that we need to talk about is just immediately makes me think of Derek, because you know, first of all, Derek, if you're listening to this at any point, you know, we miss you, brother. We're looking forward to you coming back. Hope all is going well. Hope you get your health back. Hope that you get back on here with us as soon as you can. But you know, this segment's about Derek, right? Because haunted objects and taking things home. There is a reason when John at After Hours asked me if I wanted to take that doll home, I said I would. And it was not because I wanted to bring it home and put it in my living room on the chair to greet me when I come home. Very much it was with the idea that I was immediately going to give that to Derek and let him take it because he likes haunted things.
He does.
I don't know how somebody that does what we do finds that to be a good idea. Would you ever take something home from a haunted location?
No, thank you. It can stay where it is, or Derek can take it. That's fine. Yes.
Very much the case. So I take some responsibility for his obsession with taking haunted things, Because when we first started doing this and we first started to like set up tables at shows and different conventions and things, we were the people that didn't have anything to show. We had a big empty table and we put some stickers out and we put some like just little kitschy things. So then him and I started talking because there was nobody there to talk to us because we were the losers. And we just started talking about how cool it would be if we had a freaking arsenal of haunted objects that we could whip out at any point and start showing people. And he took that ball and he ran
with it. He's still running with it. Oh my God.
He is. And I apologize to his wife, Tara, for putting her through that, for subjecting his home to potential lifelong spiritual attachments of demons and God only knows what, dead chickens. We've been to locations where Derek found a chicken bone that like a contractor left in the basement, and he insisted that it was something that he should take. Right? That's what it was very clear that it was like a wing from a chicken, right? It had like 2 bones, and you could see where somebody had like nibbled all the meat off except for the very ends. But it was in this basement of the Anchorage mansion, again in Marietta, Ohio. It was like one of the, like we had investigated there before. They didn't let us in the basement the first time because it wasn't really a safe place to go, not because of spirits, but because it was like low ceilings and water and all this other kind of stuff. So they fixed it up, and then we got excited because we could get down there. So he insisted that this was something that was haunted and we could take it. And I remember him actually showing Hidden Marietta, the girls from Hidden Marietta that were there, like, you know, making sure we didn't set the place on fire. He showed that to them, and they're like, Eric, I think that's a chicken bone a contractor left down there. And he insisted it was something. And for a long time, he had it in this little box that he would show people. But I digress. So, yeah. So, why wouldn't you take things from a haunted location as Aaron?
Well, so some of it is coming from a historical perspective. A lot of the places that we go to have a lot of history attached to them, and just we operate in a way that is trying to show respect for the things that are still there, and part of that respect is leaving the things there that are there. Right? Yeah, it's not mine to take, and so I don't take it. But then also, like, there's just that the karma that comes along with that, which I am a big believer in, and I don't want to mess with that. Not interested in that. No. How about yourself?
So the first point, absolutely agree with that. Just like the historical significance of some things. If somebody gives me something from the location, I will take it.
That's different. Yeah.
You know, because it's something that they are offering to me. I feel like with a sense of karma in mind, I feel, you know, I'm not bringing myself bad karma accepting a gift. And the only one that I'm thinking of that I ever did take was when we did the Martinsburg Roundhouse in West Virginia. I think it was West Virginia. Yeah, it was West Virginia. But anyways, he gave us a railroad spike that was found on the site, and he had many of them that he had picked up from the location, and he put like a return address label that said Martinsburg Roundhouse, you know, I was here kind of thing. And it was an old railroad spike. I still have that. It's actually in my toolbox in my basement. But I don't feel like there's anything attached to it. But even if I did feel that there was something attached to it, I don't think that it would be upset that I took it because it was gifted to me. Right.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So that's very much why besides the historical significance of not taking something, I don't want to, you know, upset something by removing essentially a piece of them from the place that they potentially, you know, held in significance in their life.
Absolutely.
Just not, I'm not in the business of upsetting spirits that I can't control. You know, it's just not my idea of a good time.
Absolutely not.
No, if Derek's with me, I'll let him upset it so that he can get it on camera because that's what he's all about.
He loves that. Yes.
He does, but it's okay. We'll let him continue down that road.
He can keep all the creepy stuff. That's fine.
So what are your thoughts on like haunted things like Annabelle? Do you think there's any truth to that whole thing?
I think that there's some truth to it. I think that there's a lot of like, I mean, I don't know enough about it. You guys have researched and know a lot more about like the haunted dolls and things than I do. But like,
Sure.
I feel like there's also a part of that that's like intention as well, and the magnification of our own emotions and our own attachments that like magnify whatever is happening in that particular thing. I don't know if that's real or not, but
it's the same reason we don't use Ouija boards.
Yeah. I mean, I don't feel like something can have all of that power on its own. Like we have to give it that power too. You know what I mean?
I could not agree with you more.
I don't want to go anywhere near some creepy dolls. They can, I don't necessarily believe in them all of the time or understand them. But I'm definitely not going to test the limits there. Yeah, they give me the willies. So I just
So what in your house, if it was the last thing you would ever expect to be haunted, would you find the funniest if it was actually had a spiritual attachment to it?
Like the refrigerator or something ridiculous.
That, I would never have expected refrigerator.
Right? Can you imagine, like, I don't know, hanging out in your kitchen and like your fridge opening every 2 minutes or anytime you pass it or something like that? I don't know. I think that
the last thing I need is for a spirit to open the refrigerator for me, because I struggle with the ability, I struggle with my ability to walk past the refrigerator without opening it by myself. But I for me, it would be like something completely ambiguous, like a roll of toilet paper. Like if I somehow found out that the roll of toilet paper we got from Costco had like a ghost from the 1920s attached to it, and every time I got a square off of it, it like poured some like what do they call that? Some like vodka down my leg or something.
Oh,
like I don't know how I'd feel about it, but like also, like, again, we talk safe spaces. The bathroom for me is a safe space. Like,
there you go. You know,
stay the heck out of the bathroom.
Yeah,
Mr.
absolutely.
Ghost.
Just sage that. Just sage it, just to make sure.
Yeah. So I love when I talk about something and it just completely catches you off guard, and then you don't have a reaction. So let's move on. Let's move on. So let's talk about not doing those things. How do we protect ourselves? We talked about it a little bit on the last episode, but I really don't think that we hit it hard enough. What do we do before and after investigations that, for lack of a better term, protect us or shield us from spiritual attachments? How did we make it this long without bringing some more home with us?
Right. So I think it's interesting because each of us have our own rituals that we do. And everything is like person specific, right? Like what I do before my investigation is different than you, different than Derek. So I know for myself, I do a lot of grounding exercises. I will do meditation coming up to an investigation to make sure that I'm keyed in. I'll make sure that even in the moments before we walk into a space, there's a lot of times out in the parking lot, I'll just stop and do grounding exercises, grounding myself into the ground before I walk into the space. Obviously, utilizing a lot of crystals, making sure that we do prayers before, after, if we need to, cleansing ourselves before, making sure we're switching out or cleansing ourselves after, making sure I use different rotation of crystals, those kind of things. What does your ritual look like?
So my ritual is very different from yours, just because I have the not the Catholic, but the Christian beliefs on that I find strength in, just because of the way that I was raised. But for me, the way that we do those prayers ahead of time, where I like to think that they're kind of all inclusive prayers. Like they touch on my beliefs as far as like calling upon the Archangel Michael to protect me. He's like think I've said it before, he's my boy. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like he's the guy that if I'm going to go into a location that I don't feel safe, I like to think that he's got my back, right?
Yeah.
And that just puts me in the right headspace.
Yeah.
Whether that is a real thing or not, I can't answer, and we can't answer that question until we're right. But that is something that I find strength in. It's just I find strength in it's like a higher power, like having my back. I don't know
Yeah.
another way to put that, right? Something that is there for me so that I don't always have to be at my best.
Mhm.
You know, I want to learn more about like your grounding techniques, your meditation. Like I've
Mhm.
always found those things fascinating. And Ashley, my wife, is actually really into that stuff. She
Yeah.
does not practice the meditation like in front of me. She
Mhm.
says she does it like as she's sitting around at times. She will do those meditations. She'll do those kind of like grounding exercises.
Mhm.
I've never tried it, but it's like
Yeah.
one of those things. It's like a drug, right? Like I've never tried it, but I hear it's good stuff, right?
Yeah.
I hear that it works. I want to learn more about it for the sake of like understanding more and like bettering my understanding of how the spiritual world works. It's just something I haven't tried.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's
You know?
interesting too, because like even the meditation part, like I'll do meditation, like meditative work in general, just like consistently all the time. But leading up
Mhm.
to our investigations, I really ramped that up. I mean, I do all my meditations at night before I go to bed, right? So like I'll do different types of meditations, whether those are like clearing my chakras, getting them moving again, focusing on like honing my throat chakra, my third eye chakra, or whatever that is, doing
Mhm.
some work with any of my my spirit guides, those kind of things. Like I'm doing different things leading up to it, which not only lead to like the protection side, but it's also intentionally opening up some of those sensitivities as I'm moving forward, right? Like if I don't do some of that stuff going into an investigation, I'm not going to be picking up as much or like being able to get tapped into as much as I am. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But even those grounding activities, like those are so simple. It's literally just like visualization, like feeling, visualizing the roots going through the soles of your feet into the ground. And like it can take 15 seconds. You know what I mean? It's just like
Mhm.
that. And it's really just repetition and like practice, you know what I mean? Figuring out what works. And again, what I do is specific to me, and depending on what your intentions are and how you know what I mean, what you want to get out of a session, like everything, it just adapts to
Sure.
what you want that to be.
Well, a fear, if you want to call it that I always have whenever I immediately go to my safe place, and like calling
Mhm.
in the big guns, so to speak. The fear that I have is that it's counterproductive to my mission
Mm,
when we do an investigation, right?
okay.
Like I always wonder if like immediately defaulting to those protective energies, if that is in a sense closing me off a little bit,
Mhm.
right? Because I have noticed that the more that I lean on that, the less I the less the long let's not the less the less I get there, but the longer it takes me to tap into the energy in a space,
Yeah.
right? And again, is it psychological? I don't know. Probably, right? Probably partly psychological, but also what if it's not? Are we or am I putting up that barrier that is just closing me off completely? Because
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
I will say that when I have done investigations where you and I were like feeding off of each other, kind of
Mhm.
like going that same pathway of energy driven grounding and just being in the moment and letting things come to us. I have gotten way more in those investigations than I have where I'm just like, nope, this time I'm
Yeah.
going in guns a blazing, you know,
Yeah.
get behind me, you winged Pegasus of armor plating, and
Yeah.
like bust these boogans, right? Like that's very much like when I do that, I get less out of it.
Yeah. I would say so. And maybe I'm speaking out of turn here, but like if if you're going into an investigation, if any of us are going into an investigation where we are thinking, I need to put all of my protections in place, chances are likely that we're doing that from a place of fear, that like whatever is there, you feel like you need to protect yourself from. And just innately by doing that, we're starting to shut down some of those sensitivities that we have in order to make sure that those pathways are closed. So like, I absolutely agree with what you're saying. Like whenever we're going in saying like, oh, I'm totally protected, I'm going to do all these protection things. Like sometimes that can be counterproductive. That's why I like to use some of the energies, like some of my purple stones and some of those things that are keeping the negativity out. Like it's not necessarily making sure that no contact is happening, right? Like we don't ever want no contact to happen whenever we're in these situations, right? But it's like making sure that we're keeping the negativity out, allowing the positivity or the positive vibrations to come through and still being able to connect on that plane, you know, which is kind of getting into like the energy work and like the crystal work as well. We're kind of getting a little off topic, but like that does, like there's something to be said for a balance when it comes to the protection. Like how much protection is too much protection? You know what I mean? How much is shutting everything down and closing it off versus kind of working hand in hand with the energies that are there.
No, and I can definitely, like, I feel that when you talk about that, like I feel that, and I feel that the longer we go between investigations, I find myself being more protective of myself, because I feel like, you know how like you feel like when you're like, if you're running, not that I've ever done that in my life, but like somebody that runs a lot, like if they're running every day, they're used to it, right? They have their cadence, they have their routine, they have their, you know, pre-run rituals on what they eat, what they drink, and all this kind of things. Like the longer we go, and unfortunately we've had a very long dry spell right now with Derek going through the things that he's going through, and as a group, us going through those things with him, I very much find myself just immediately defaulting to that protect me attitude, you know? So as we get back into it this year, I want to start, you know, getting back into those crystals. I stopped carrying crystals. I stopped finding the value in those, you know, over the last 6-8 months. I want to get back into that, right? Because like I say, it does pay dividends, right? However, well, that's a whole nother discussion in and of itself. But really it's those routines, the confidence that we get, I think that's what keeps us safe, you know, in whatever form that confidence comes in. I think that's the ticket. I really do. You know, and when you start talking about like the word fear is a very, very bad word when it comes to investigating, right? Because the belief of investigators is fear leads to weakness, and weakness
vulnerability
leads
and extreme vulnerability.
Right? You took the word right out of my mouth, right? The fear, and that is dangerous, because if you believe this kind of stuff, that's how the spirits can attach themselves. If you are fearful, that's almost like a little bit of a num-nums for the ghost to attach to, and they're just gonna be like, I'm gonna eat that fear, I'm gonna go home with you, and then I'm gonna haunt your roll of toilet paper. So bring it full circle to the toilet paper. So one last thing to talk about on this week. I know we're getting a little tight on time. So what do we do whenever we get somebody that you know, whether it be ourselves or somebody that we're investigating with? How do we respond to that as a team usually?
Right? So I want to tell. I want to tell a little anecdote that I had from years ago, from before when we were investigating together, when I did have a pretty severe attachment that was uncomfortable, right? I was living in an apartment in Colorado. I went to go visit a friend of mine in New Orleans, and while I was in New Orleans, something attached itself to me there and came back with me to Colorado. Now I know this because whenever I was living in my apartment, I'm sorry?
I said yikes.
Yes, yikes is right. When I was living in my apartment in Colorado, I was obviously sensitive. I'm not as keyed into it then as I am now, but I was sensitive, And I knew that like my apartment was clean, and then all of a sudden it was not. And I came back from my trip, and all of a sudden there was a man in my apartment, probably a younger man. I think something that had to do with the Civil War. He was probably a soldier from the Civil War that attached himself to me down there. And I went from being comfortable in my little studio apartment to spending 2 days not sleeping. Like I literally couldn't turn the lights out. I could feel him in the corner of the room. He was just glaring at me and just sending so much hatred and anger my way, right? And it was so uncomfortable. For 2 days, I didn't sleep. I kept the lights on. I literally just sat with my back against the wall and stared at him in the corner. He was awful. The third day, I was able to finally get to sleep, and I don't feel things. Things don't touch me. That's not a way that I experience things, except he woke me up by dragging his hand up my leg and then grabbed my leg. Like it was terrifying, terrifying. Now, I didn't know anything about cleansing or doing any of that then. What ended up happening is that he ended up going and attaching himself to the person that I was dating at the time. I went to go see them at some point. All of a sudden, my apartment was clean. He was there and then he wasn't again. Whoa. And a few days later, I talked to this person that I was dating at the time. I went to go visit him, and I walked into his house, and he came tearing from the living room, running from the living room to come out to me at the front door. And he said, "Hey, have you been here? Like, when did you get here?" I said, "I just walked in the door." He said, "I could have sworn that you've been here for the last 5 minutes. I have heard noises going around the front or the first floor of his house." He would be in the living room, and he would hear a chair move in the kitchen, and then he would go in there, and then he would hear something else in the next room, and the thing was literally making him run around in circles for 5 minutes. And then a few days later, his brother, who also lived with him, was listening to some music in the shower, and he had a legit boom box that was picked up and thrown across the room, dented the door. Like, this thing was nasty. It was not very nice. But like, there are some things that you can look for if you aren't as sensitive as we are. Like, obviously, you see stereos being thrown across the room. That might be a signal that there's something there that wasn't there before. But there were a lot of feelings. Like, there was that heaviness that we feel, that discomfort, that inability to sleep, like knowing that something was there, knowing that something was watching me, knowing something was behind me whenever I was turned around. So what happens whenever something like that happens? To your point, like, we've talked about the cleansing. We've talked about different ways to clear your space and to cut those cords. Had that been now, I would have been doing that immediately, right? Cutting the cord for that thing and saging the bejesus out of that apartment until it felt like it was clean, right? Yeah.
It's a very it's something that, like, when I think about like attachments, I honestly can tell you that I do not believe I've ever brought something home with me.
Yeah.
But my father has. And when I don't know if I've ever told you this, but when Derek and I had first started to investigate 10 years ago, we went to Hillview Manor in Newcastle. We investigated there for his bachelor party. Maybe a week or two later, the Vickery Mansion down the road in Freedom was hosting a kind of like it was like a Halloween themed get together, for the community. You could pay $5 or something like that and go and, see all of these vendors that they had that were like Halloween themed. It was a small gathering, but it was kind of fun. Well, my dad bought us tickets because he was trying to placate to the whole thing with, like, "Oh, Dan's doing paranormal investigations now. I saw this thing where they're doing this Halloween night." So he bought us tickets to it, and they also had a thing where you could pay like $20 and stay with an established paranormal group that's based out of the Vickery Mansion and do an investigation with them and kind of just like sit there as a fly on the wall, right?
Yeah.
Well, we did that, and my dad was there, and the whole time he was sitting in the back like, "Nope, this isn't real. None of this is real." He was very much playing it off like, this isn't anything. It's all smoke and mirrors, whatever. come to find out years later that he very much believes in the stuff, because he himself has had some wild stories that we can share in later episodes. But he went home that night with my stepmother. I went wherever I went. I think I came home, whatever it was. And he was woken up in the middle of the night by their smoke alarm going off outside of their bedroom when there was no smoke. And he woke up, and then all of a sudden on the back porch, the stereo system that's attached to his TV out on the back porch just started going full force without the TV being turned on, but you could hear what was on the TV. So, needless to say, my stepmother also thinks that he had something follow him home that night. But it's all, it's just, you need to be safe, right?
Yeah.
So for those listening, I don't believe that, you have to not do investigations to be safe. It's all about intent. It's all about feeling strong. You are strong if you feel strong, those kind of things, right?
Absolutely.
So we are out of time, Aaron. Once again, here we are. It has been a pleasure. That was a lot of fun. Really enjoyed talking about that, though. Thank you for your time tonight. Thank you, everyone who listened and tuned in. Thank you for following another week with Iron City Paranormal as we cross the bridge. Maybe there are spirits attached. Our spirit attachments are real. Maybe they're emotional weight of what we experience in dark places. Maybe they're both. But one thing we can be certain of, what we carry home from an investigation can change us, whether it's paranormal in person or personal. Until next time, cross the bridge carefully and always return safely from the other side of the bridge. Have a great night, everyone.
Bye.
Toodles.